understood why baby mamas aren't embarrassed for choosing to have kids by men who they knew were low-quality people. Can somebody explain that to me? I've never understood why these women act like martyrs or saints for taking care of kids that they brought into this world. You literally ruin your children's lives by giving them a father who's a bad person. You have nothing to be proud of. And I say that as a product of a 3-time baby mama who chose to have 3 kids with a man who proved to her over and over and over again that he was a loser. And let's be clear, when I say baby mama, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Don't be a coward. Don't try to deflect to the small number of women who end up becoming baby mamas due to extreme and extenuating circumstances. And don't use the plight of women in underdeveloped countries to shield your first world privileged behind from taking accountability for your actions. This is Cosmic Nebula. On this channel, we exist in the abyss, the darkness, the dark part of your mind where you bury all of the truths that your ego does not want to acknowledge. We all know that the vast majority of baby mamas in Western countries are in their predicament due to choice. They had the options and they chose not to exercise them. This is the case for my own mother, as well as my grandmother, my older sisters, my aunt, and other women in my family. Because in the Black community in America, having children out of wedlock and without commitment from a man is damn near a rite of passage for Black women. As a kid growing up, I would often hear baby mamas around me lamenting their struggle in trying to take care of their kids without a father, complaining about how hard they had to work, and cursing their children's fathers for being deadbeat loser criminals. Now, as a young child, I naturally didn't question this. I thought that their indignation was justified because I endured the same struggle and poverty because my father was one of those deadbeat loser criminals. But as I started to get older and I started to take a stark look at the world around me, I started to wonder, why did these women choose to sleep with men who they knew were bad people, get pregnant by them, and then carry the child to term? All the while knowing that the child's father lacked the financial capabilities to adequately provide for the child or be a good father. All the while living in a developed country where they had access to all different kinds of contraception to prevent pregnancy. All the while knowing that if pregnancy did occur, that they had the option to ensure that they didn't bring life into the world with a man whose DNA didn't deserve to make it into the next generation. And after failure to exercise any of these options, I've always wondered how it made sense that these women became martyrs or saints for struggling to take care of kids that they brought into the world irresponsibly. How anything about their choices deserved praise or even sympathy. If you ask me, being a baby mama is something that you should be embarrassed about because it's a permanent reminder that you make bad choices. Bad choices that statistically have a negative impact on the lives of innocent children. And that's just unforgivable to me. I don't care what adults do to mess up their own lives, go ahead. But when you involve innocent kids, I have a goddamn problem with that. Now hold up. When conversations like this get brought up, people's immediate response is to try to deflect by blaming 50% of the responsibility for the baby mama epidemic in Western country onto men. But I adamantly disagree with that. In my opinion, women are more at fault than men are. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, women have the womb. As women, we possess the womb, not men. We control who has access to our wombs. We control what we allow to be implanted in our wombs, and we control what is allowed to grow in our wombs. Now, like I said before, do not try to deflect this statement to the minority of women in Western countries that grow up in cult-like communities that are still restrictive or oppressive to women. That's not the majority of Western women's experiences, and you know that. Stop using other women's pain. Stop with the intellectual dishonesty. I am also aware of the recent Roe v. Wade changes in America, but I would still argue that most of the responsibility still falls onto women. You can limit abortion laws, but you cannot make a woman lay down and conceive a child with a man in the 21st century in developed countries. Women still have agency and free will to decide to have unprotected sex. We are fortunate enough to live in the 21st century. Even 75 years ago, the Western world was still quite oppressive to women. Women had less options for work, less upward mobility, less options for education, and most importantly, less options to prevent unwanted pregnancy. Society at that time also pressured women to get married, to get pregnant, to have kids, and become housewives at very young ages. And this was an inescapable reality for women for thousands of years. And it still is for some women in certain parts of the world. However, due to technological advances over the last 50 years, we have been able to gain an unimaginable amount of control over our reproductive systems as women. We also have full control over the trajectory of our lives and access to information about basic biology to help us make the best decision when it comes to reproduction. This is something no other women in the history of mankind have ever had. And in that time, the number of women choosing to have kids with men that they know are not good people has skyrocketed. And I want to know why. Why aren't y'all embarrassed about that reality? Number 2, women are not treated like cattle anymore. For a large part of human history, women were treated like possessions. Male family members, mostly fathers, but then later on your husband, had complete control over the girls' and women's lives in their family. Men decided who women were allowed to marry, they decided when they were allowed to marry, and they decided under what terms they were allowed to marry. Women had little say in the matter for thousands of years. Women had no ability to escape the pressures of marriage or the burden of motherhood. But in the 21st century, in developed Western countries, this is not the case anymore. For the majority of women anyway. And let me say it again for the assholes in the back who enjoy being dishonest. Yes, I am aware that there are still instances in Western countries of girls and women being groomed by men in certain communities to be married off to men within those communities. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but I'm saying it's not that common. It's not the majority of women. Those instances are a minority in Western countries, and you know that. So stop trying to use other women's suffering to avoid taking accountability for your choices. Don't be a coward. Modern day women get to choose the type of men we allow in our lives. We get to choose the type of men we open our legs for. And we get to choose the type of men we allow to father our children. We choose. We live in a society with laws and order. Men are not chasing women down in the street unmasked and forcing themselves onto women. Now let me preface the statement I just made for the people in the back that love bringing up as if it is way more common than it actually is. I've noticed over the last few years, especially, women constantly deflecting to the experiences of victims and all the resulting trauma of it as a way to avoid any form of criticism on women for their actions. Fuck you for trying to use other women who are victims of a crime as a shield for your weak ego. The vast majority of women who are baby mamas are not in that situation due to, and you know that. So don't try to act like you don't. So if it is women who get to choose, I want to know why women are choosing the worst kinds of men. Riddle me that, baby mamas. I'm waiting. Why is it that when women are given freedom to choose who they want to allow into their bodies and who they want to be the father of their children, many of them are choosing the worst kinds of men? And they are allowing their children to be born into lives of poverty and dysfunction. And somehow you have the gall to play the victim and walk around like a martyr who has made this grand sacrifice for your children. Women put their bodies through hell when they get pregnant. Historically, pregnancy was deadly to women. It is still high risk to this day. High blood pressure, gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, edema, postpartum depression, hair loss, stretch marks, painful labor, uterine prolapse, urine incontinence. The list goes on and on and on. Women go through all of this for men who aren't worth the dirt on the bottom of your shoes. How is that not a humiliating reality to y'all? And y'all have the nerve, you have all the audacity in the world. I wouldn't be able to show my face in public. The humiliation would be too much for me because I could never forgive myself for putting my kids at risk of poverty, food insecurity, and a whole battery of psychological issues because I chose the wrong man to be their father. So explain to me how y'all do it. Where does this confidence come from to parade around like you're not a whole-ass clown? I'll wait. Because I could never. And why do we as a society give them a pass on this? Why does society take away shame? Because shame is a very powerful deterrent. You should be ashamed, ma'am. Any person, male or female, that chooses the wrong partner to have kids with should be ashamed. You have a moral obligation to do right by your children because they didn't ask to be here. You don't have the right to choose irresponsibly when that choice impacts the lives of innocent children forever. You don't. And no, it doesn't matter how good of a mother you are. The reality is children are born of one man and one woman. Biology made this rule, not me. Children have the best shot at life when they have a good mother and a good, healthy, involved father present. And no amount of being the best single mother in the world will ever be able to compensate for the lack of a good father. Period. Kids need fathers. So humble yourself. I know that reality doesn't agree with a lot of y'all's feelings, but to that I say, fuck you. I don't respect anybody who brings kids into this world irresponsibly. You don't deserve respect. So then why did you do it? And do you apologize to your children for how your decisions have negatively impacted their lives? Because my mother has never apologized to me, and I've never even heard of a single mother apologizing to her children and taking accountability for her behavior. All y'all do is sit around talking shit about the father and never criticizing yourself. You never hold yourself responsible. If he's a dog, but you sleep with him and get pregnant by him, what does that make you? What does it make you for risking your health to bring a child into this world with a man that you consider to be a dog? Now, people are cowards, and cowards will always try to make excuses for their bad decisions because taking accountability for your choices is hard. The common excuses given by women who end up as baby mamas to despicable men is to always claim that they were somehow tricked. They always claim that the man pretended to be a good person at the beginning of a relationship, and then 2.5 seconds after getting pregnant and 5.6 seconds after giving birth to a child, poof, this good man suddenly turned into a scumbag. Every time I have ever asked a baby mama why she chose the man she chose, this is the only answer I've ever gotten. Isn't that strange? Derek the banker, who works 40 hours a week, has a savings account, good credit score, and a 401k, suddenly morphs into little man the corner boy who only owns black Air Force Ones and has never graduated from high school. David, the college graduate with a full-time job, a house and a car, and an active social life, suddenly morphs into Dave, the dude that refuses to commit to you, never calls you back, and dates other women right in front of your face. And this metamorphosis only takes place after you have saddled yourself with his baby. Ain't that a bitch? Scientists need to come and study this phenomenon because something is surely going on. The second most common reason made is to blame men for being bad people. And you would be right. There are a lot of men who are bad people these days. The society that we live in the 21st century is one that encourages low integrity behavior from both men and women. That's true, I will agree to that. But even still, why are you opening your legs to low quality men? Why are you granting them access to your womb? You are under no obligation to choose those men. You still have agency and freedom of choice. Why sleep with them? Reproduction is a responsibility. Now let's say that those are the only men left in the world. Why wouldn't you rather abstain from sex rather than risk having children with a low-quality man? Why isn't that a better option? I read a very interesting comment a long time ago. The question was, why do scumbag men exist? And the answer was, because women keep fucking them. Women underestimate greatly the amount of power and influence we have over the standards men choose to uphold in regards to relationships with women. Now, I'm not saying that men are not responsible for their own behavior. They are responsible for themselves 100%. However, men are competitive. Women are the choosers and men are the ones that get chosen. When men see that certain behavior gets them attention and sex from women, they will strive to engage in that behavior. When men see that bare minimum effort gets them sex and attention from women, they will not strive to maintain a higher standard for themselves. Now, I personally think that that's some bullshit. Each person in this world should have enough self-respect and integrity to maintain their own standards regardless of what low-quality women want to sleep with. If you are a man who lowers his standards and changes his behavior in order to get sex from women, then you are a clown, sir. I have no respect for men who do that. But whether or not we like it, women play a big role in encouraging bad behavior from men. I watched a documentary a long time ago about marriage and dating in China. Now, if you didn't know, in China, marriageable men greatly outnumber marriageable women. So Chinese women are expected to marry by 25 years old. So in order to agree to this, Chinese women require that a man has a house and a car before they are willing to go out on a date with them. One man said that the very first question a woman asked him on a date was if he owned a house. And one realtor interviewed said that he regularly got calls from men desperate to buy any house that he had available. All because these men couldn't get any attention from women otherwise. In a world where women require every man to own a cow, every man is a cow herder. Women have the power to set the standards for what behavior is acceptable in men. And for some reason, a lot of women choose to just not exercise that power. And they choose the lowest common denominator men to father the next generation, and then they complain about the lack of good men in the world. Women breed with bad men. Dear women who like bad boys, you're a part of the problem. All you have to do is stop sleeping with low-quality men, and low-quality men will immediately change their behavior because it no longer gets them validation, sex, or attention from women. This is a topic I have never been able to discuss with any baby mama because every time I bring it up, of course, they get angry, they get defensive, and at times they threaten violence because the truth is a very bitter pill to swallow. And it's the kids who get to pay at the end of the day. I grew up poor, but I made it out. But I've seen firsthand the hardships and suffering that women subject children to, all because they chose to sleep with low-quality men. And I want to know why y'all aren't ashamed of y'all behavior. And why do we as a society give women a pass on this? Why don't we shame them? The only people who deserve sympathy are innocent children who are the victim of this disgusting behavior.